Good morning, everybody. Great to see you all here in person, face-to-face, and also all of those of you who are online. Thanks to KSI and Tansri Michael Yeo and his team for putting together this event. I kind of won't repeat all the remarks that have been made, but obviously it's been an extraordinary 24 months. Yes, 2 years since our first MCO. We've seen heroic efforts across the globe. In higher education, we've seen staff and students and support services shift their services rapidly online. It seemed impossible at the time, but we, or you, did it almost overnight. Perhaps at the start it was chaotic, but the whole system pulled together to ensure we were still moving forward to deliver education. But it was never ideal. Tales of students atop trees to get a connection, sitting outside in car parks, sleeping overnight to ensure they could join a class online. It's had a colossal impact on the mental health of staff and students. In the work I do across the student experience, we've seen a 35% increase in the usage of counselling. And we know from our data globally that 70% of students really want to get back to campus. So it's great, of course, that students are now getting back to a campus experience. Because remember, higher education is not just about curriculum or a paper experience. It's about the social aspects of university life, developing a network, making friends both from your own country, from other countries, etc. So perhaps only over the next 2 years are we going to really be able to understand the real toll of the last 2 years on the community aspects of education. And as Dato Parmjit wisely said, perhaps we need to be careful of celebrating false dawns and sighing a sense of false relief over what's going to be happening over the next few weeks. So, to unpick the lessons over the next 2 years, we have a very distinguished panel drawn from across the spectrum of Malaysian higher education, both from the private and public sectors. In your folders, you'll have the full bios. I hope I don't need to read the full bios for you. I'm just going to introduce the panel briefly. Prof. Hamdi, of course, is Vice-Chancellor of the Universiti Malaya. Prof. Sita is Vice-Chancellor and Chief Executive from Quest International University in Perak. Professor Chris Baldwin is Chief Executive Officer and the Provost of Newcastle University Medicine Malaysia, down in Johor. Professor Giles Yeo is the CEO and founder of the AIMS Met Group. And finally, joining us online, and Prof. Mushtaq, you better indicate that you can hear us.
Thanks, Guy. I can hear and see you very clearly. Thank
Fantastic.
You very much for having
Prof. Mushtaq, he's out in Putrajaya. He's the Provost and CEO of Heriot Watt Malaysia. So I'm going to ask all of the panel to make some very brief opening remarks for about 6 minutes or so. And I've got one fairly simple question. Prof. Hamdi, you're going to start. What did we get right and what did we get wrong over the last 24 months? Prof. Hamdi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Guy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. The Universiti Malaya is the oldest university in Malaysia, and a lot of expectations on this university. Came in November 2020 after serving 2 years in UKM as the Vice-Chancellor. What I've seen, the strength in the Universiti Malaya particularly is the one that probably they have done right is encouraging, even before, way before the pandemic, they have a week of online, for example. Every semester, at least 1 week is full online. All the campus is almost empty where everybody is doing it online. So this has really prepared the students and the lecturers alike. When pandemic came in the early 2020, so they are very much aware of how things are going to be transformed. And that really smoothly transfer into the full online. That is probably one of the greatest things that has been prepared for the university community. But what I've seen is our greatest weakness is in the risk management agency. We probably have not anticipated such calamity, and therefore the full swing of preparation is not there. And that is why now, late last year, we revamped the organization chart and incorporate a very strong unit for risk management, knowing that we might possibly have similar calamity in the future. So we should be future-proof, sort of ready, and what are we supposed to do in order to make sure that the university is really ready for any sort of big wave of calamities. So that's number one. Number two, that we probably are not really fully aware is the extent of our B40 students, the accessibility and the ability to own devices, electronic devices particularly, when they have to go home. And then we realize that, you know, it's a serious matter where accessibility of network and stuff is really, really not there. So we have at least 15 to 20% of our student population is suffering from accessing the lectures when we do online. I mean, online in the university is okay, but the students are 97% actually, initially, was not in the campus anymore. Only 3 to 5% stayed where they really have issues in going back. So these are the things that we never thought of. We have prepared the campus with network, with proper access points and switches and whatnot. We have upgraded it, you know, over time. We had the largest bandwidth compared with the other campuses in Malaysia. But when they are not in the campus, then we really, you know, not prepared for that. And we realize that, as I mentioned, 15 to 20% of our B40 populations are really in trouble. So that has really impacted us. And since the question is what you have not done right, that's probably the thing that we are not fully prepared. And therefore, again, we beef up the risk center, the risk agency in Universiti Malaya to ensure that we really can help the students in a very big way. It has impacted us at least for 2 semesters where these students are in limbo. They couldn't get access to the internet, and because of their location in their hometown. So I think because we are not fully prepared, because our risk management is not really, you know, having that scenario in mind. So we are not having, you know, a proper mitigation plan if that happened. And therefore, in 2 semesters, we are really, you know, asking ourselves, what are we supposed to do effectively? Movement is controlled, you know, things are not working as we planned. So that's really a bit chaotic in that manner. What I mean with chaotic is that making sure that the students can get the education that they are supposed to get, and without compromising the quality. Number 2, which is probably an issue, is that when we are not fully prepared again, the teaching online is okay, but when it comes to exam, for example, having proctoring software is not fully proof actually. And again, we are struggling, again, because of not fully prepared for the assessment wave. So these are probably the issues which I wish to share. Apart from all the good things that we have done, there are things which we really need to look at. And now, again, with the risk management agency has been established, we are underlying all the possible pandemic, calamities, whatever, and what are the actions that has to be taken. When it happens, we can just push the button. It can start off without delay, without compromising anything. And the speed of responding, I think, is an issue. So therefore, it is very important for us in university to really look into our risk management agency. We thought that it's only for business. And of course we have, but we do not really put a lot of emphasis in the risk management and risk mitigation exercise. So these are the things which I thought should be shared with the rest. I know everybody now is fully aware of that, but when the pandemic ends, we probably go back to square one, get our life as usual without thinking that we will probably get another round of issues as big as that. So probably that is the starting point. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. I mean, so how are we going to avoid this going back to, you said there's a danger that we're just going to go back to how it was before and not be prepared for the next calamity?
Yeah, if we do have a very, very good risk management team who will do the assessment and scenario analysis, we know that, okay, what are we supposed to do in facing that? I think the issue is all about preparation. The issue is all about us putting in the resources required if things happen, and what are the SOPs, the proper procedures if things like that happen, which are not in place before, if I have to be honest. Yeah.
And you also mentioned about obviously the groups of students who didn't have access to laptops or access to internet at home. I mean, there's enormous financial implications on that. Did you get support from government, or did you have to draw on your own resources?
To be quite honest, we do have a bit of support, very little, but a lot of them are coming from our own resources. And yeah, we spend tons of money providing them with the necessary devices. And a lot of good, Samaritan actually assists, and alumni also come in and assist, but it's insufficient. We need to deploy very quickly the reserve that we have, and that has taken a big toll on us because of a lot of assistance. And bear in mind that public universities in Malaysia, the students are paying peanuts, in comparison to the rest. So yeah, it's taking a huge toll on us, but we learn the lesson. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Prof. Hamdi. Now moving over to Prof. Zita from Quest University in Perak, obviously a very relatively new institution compared to Universiti Malaya. Same question to you. What did you get right and what did you get wrong over the last 24 months?
All right, thank you very much, Guy. Good morning, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri, and our host for this morning's session, and fellow panelists. I just want to say thank you very much for allowing me to share our experiences coming from an opposite size institution compared to Dato Hamdi's Universiti Malaya, but the story looks the same, but perhaps on a much more smaller scale. I believe a crisis like this sometimes is good for us because chaos brings about change. And crises like this make us reflect back what is it that we have not addressed sufficiently and allow us to think about changes that we need to address. So I think crises like this, of course we don't want to welcome COVID again in our society, but it does allow us to think about what changes we wanted to make. It's a small university with 6 faculties. We consider it comprehensive, small population of students. Our concern when COVID came in March 2018, 2 years ago, was about how do we continue the education of the kids that we already have committed. Issue of sustainability and staff safety and student safety as well. That was our immediate concern. And after we kind of settled with the shock of what has happened, I think the management immediately drive into providing online classes. Maybe it was primitive, downloading the materials and so on online, but along the way we created a lot of training, and so that the lecturers, not just the students, the lecturers are able to deliver better lectures, because those lectures are being monitored by the management from time to time to see how well it reaches the student outside there. And of course, technology has been very wonderful. It has been useful. We started even before pre-COVID to actually introduce this into the system. So crisis allow us to change, and I would say that we addressed what the students needed. We took care of international students as best as we could. The staff and so on. The other thing that I thought that came out of this COVID, we addressed the student, the teachers, the teaching, learning, the pedagogy. It was all moving concurrently, I would think haphazardly in the first 1-2 semesters, because imagine students who came in 2020 were just SPM holders and who were not thoroughly exposed like what you have students from last year. Opportunities for change. And similarly, we start looking at, is the current structure sufficient to support us, our activities? What needs to be changed immediately and fast? I think being a private university, I think there's agility, there's a will to change, the time to change perhaps is far more flexible as compared to public universities. it's very much an internal matter how we change. We look at pedagogy. We were very concerned whether the students are learning, the learning outcome still matters. So we're looking at how exams can be modified, there are different forms of exams. When you have medical student, the approach is different. When you have pharmacy, when you have engineering, so we need to be able to ensure that the exam methods, the methodology would be actually meet the requirements of the program and so on. And we need to reach a lot of other resources. So there's a continuous training for staff throughout the semester. I think the rapid transformation is essential at that time. We couldn't stop. We had no choice. The lecturers have to adapt, and so have the students, because we felt the continuity of examinations and learning is extremely important. So we felt that along the way, with that opportunity, we can build resilience, and look at issue of sustainability, because we were looking at numbers of students who are coming in, the number of students who deferred, who quit for various reasons. How could we counsel them back so that they don't lose out what they have initially invested in us? So we need that counseling, a very strong approach to look at how our students are managing in this COVID time, and we want to continue that kind of support services to the students. I would think that we need to be, COVID taught us to be versatile. That versatility is extremely important, that virtual activities are extremely important. You need to be able to adjust, like what Dato just said about risk management. I don't think risk management is something that we now seriously need to address. But in the course of facing what we had to be very versatile. We need to have plan A, plan B, team A, team B. The schedules need to be looked at every time the ministry comes up with new policy and guidelines, or MKN says you can do this, you can do that. You need to quickly react and act on it. And I think it teaches us that you need to be agile. Yeah, you need to be agile in what you are doing without trying your best, sacrificing the quality of learning, welfare of students and staff as well. The other thing we learn, and I think we should continue looking, again, is a risk management issue, like what Dato just said, is how fast do you react? Immediacy, yeah, the agility to respond to problems. Daily we get reports of cases of students or staff who are infected. What do we do with it? Are we following the SOP? We still keep it very tightly within the campus. And these are things that we felt are learning, are things that we will continue to address. Academic matters, still we maintain the same academic requirements. We look at curriculum reviews as equally as sharp as before. We look at results. We have not changed very much on that, but there is a need to use, the use of IT has made us a little bit more flexible, supple, in the sense that you look at requirement issues, recruitment processes, admission processes, whether we need to change the schedule, the timetable, for example. You need to be a bit more agile and flexible, because there are students who come in later, there are students who may have to request for deferment. IT has been very useful to help us look at the data and make analyses that are perhaps very useful for us. I think one last point that I felt, again, coming back to what Dato said, is it's about how we have dedicated our management, the leadership, into teamwork, and in addressing all crisis matters. I think we have a COVID team there who's daily updating us. Individual responsibility, team responsibility, organizational responsibility, they need to be very dedicated and very agile in this. What we have not done right, I don't know whether we want to use what we have done wrong. We have no benchmark to compare with whether we have done right or not. One of the things when I was discussing this with our staff the other day, when I said, well, perhaps we should have reacted faster. We were in shock for a while and not sure what to do. We have students in campus, we have students at home, we have to make sure they are safe, they have to go home. There are international students who are very unhappy, they are so affected by it, and there's a lot of pressure at that point of time. We we should have reacted faster, addressed those issues, quickly transform what we have to transform, although it may be not as efficient and as good, but we should have reacted or acted faster to address the student. Again, our issue is continuity of learning, welfare, and sustainability. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Prof. Sita. I must ask a question, it's a slightly cheeky question, but I know you've got lots of experience, obviously, with your time with the MQA. How did they react in terms of the pandemic, and what was your feeling in terms of their flexibility?
I hope nobody's going to quote me here. I think they were equally in a shock because they had to stay at home, they had to work at home, and I think most QA body took a step back for a while and not sure what to do now. But I like the policy that they've issued I also sit in Hong Kong, the Accreditation Council there. We all decided more or less the same thing, that we will go now on virtual accreditation. And I actually enjoyed, now on the other side, being on the other side of the fence, you save money, you save time. Actually, the outcomes are, I would say, no different. Yeah, I would think the policy allowing flexible learning, online learning, addressing internship policy, that helps us to maneuver in that difficult time. You know, those coming from MQA, I think they were in a shock for a while, what to do. Most QA bodies reacted similarly.
Sure.
But then they came back and decided, I said, okay, we need to be flexible, we need to be more open-minded. We will now issue policy on online, internship, practical requirements, and so on. So I like the way they have changed, actually, very, very much more open.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's a commonly held view, isn't it, that they've reacted very well over the last 24 months. Chris, over to you. What did we get right and what did we get wrong over the last 24 months?
Okay, thank you, Guy. Okay, right, I think firstly, a couple of things we got right. I think firstly, the immediate switch for everyone to go teaching online. I think that everyone has really got that right. And I really think that it shows across the board that our staff and our students are very resilient and very adaptable, and that's a great credit to everyone, that everyone's been able to do that. I think, just for an example, our preliminary final year results for our medical students this year have been as good as they've been for any year. And I think that is a really great testament to the students and the staff to actually manage to do that and to do everything with all the problems that we've had. I think another important point that we can think about is that I think the working from home has actually worked very well and is showing great advantages for people. I mean, even for me, it's shown that it saved me an hour commuting in the morning and an hour commuting in the evening. And so I very much think that we have to think as universities how we can actually bring in a blended type of working as we go forward. Academics have always had the ability to work at home, but I think this really works with our professional services stuff. So I think it's how we work. It's not been done in the past. I think it's something that we need to bring in to work out how we can do it to make it fair across the board. But I think it really saves time, and I think it really makes people want to work together, and I think that that's really good. I think I'll go into some of the things that maybe we got wrong, maybe we improved as we went along. And I think at the start, I think probably everyone, we were too quick in our communications with students. We were too quick in saying, we will do this, we will do that, and then something changed, and then we had to change again. And by having change, it kept making people very stressed. So I think sometimes you need to make decisions, make those decisions slowly, and then keep to those decisions for a period of time so you can let people plan and go on. And I do think that this was maybe also influenced by the government to some extent. I think the government's done a fantastic job. We've managed to have one of the best vaccine rollouts in the country. But sometimes the government, I will say, made an announcement to the press, and then that announcement to the press wasn't followed up by the SOP or anything else. And so then we would have the students contacting us immediately after a press conference, and we didn't know what would happen for another 1 or 2 weeks. And so we had to say, wait, especially with international students. So I think that maybe can I request that maybe the government has the SOP and everything in place before they make their announcements? And I think everyone here will probably agree with that was a problem. I think also that something that we learned is that we had to have some centralised control over the communication. I think sometimes when we started off, different programmes and different deans were making announcements, and then that caused some confusion across the campus because one thing was saying something else. So you need to have the local teams making the communications, but you do need to have a centralisation to make sure the message is clear across the campus. And I think that that's very important. I think that I agree. I'm not an expert on exams. I do agree that there are some concerns about examinations, online examinations. We've looked at our results from the online examinations that we've had and previous years, and actually we don't see any difference, but there is a perception, particularly amongst students, that some students are maybe gaming it somehow. And I think that we don't want that perception there, even if it isn't there, and we need to make sure that we're really clear on our proctoring and managing the exam so students can't cheat. Even if it's just a perception, we need to make sure be sure that that's there. I think that as we go forward, I think maybe the hybrid meeting we've got here is working well, but I don't think we've got hybrid meetings working as good. I think everyone having meetings online is good. Everyone having meetings in person is good. I think when you have a hybrid meeting, it tends to be that the online participants tend to feel a bit left out, aren't working, and sometimes the technology isn't so good. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was in a meeting with the UK with my faculty, and I must say that in the UK our boardroom isn't very good, and so the sound was terrible off of the computer, and I could hardly hear anything. Fortunately, I now have hearing aids, so I went on to Zoom on my phone, which feeds directly into my hearing aids, and then I could hear. But many people still can't hear, and so I think that we need to develop better skills at our hybrid teaching, hybrid meetings as we go on, and I think that that's the technology to develop that and to have that. And then finally, I just would like to say that campus need people. I mean, a campus isn't a campus without people. Without the students there's no campus. So I think that it's good that we can bring people back. We have to be careful, but I think that staff and students want that connection. I've been to a number of meetings over the last couple of months, and you can see people are so happy to see each other. You're practically hugging each other, and if you think that that's for you yourself as an academic, you can think what the students have missed, and they've missed all these interactions over the last 2 years. So I do really think it's very important that we're bringing students back now safely, but allowing them to interact, have social gatherings and such like.
Chris, in the data that we collect, there seems to be a sense that students are getting almost used to being online, and there's almost you've got groups of students who are kind of reluctant to come back to campus now. Have you experienced that issue?
I think that there's always maybe a group of students, maybe more introverted, who prefer that, and I think that there are still a group of students who are worried about COVID. I think you have to encourage them, but part of being a student, part of being, I guess, as an adult, is interactions with people, and you need to have those, and you can't build those interactions as well online. I think probably the majority of our students are clamouring to be back on campus and to have this. So I think we have to be careful and understand the students who don't want to do it, and maybe give them extra support. But I think that most people do, and we're actually not opening our campus up to the 11th for a number of reasons, because we've got exams, and I have students already. Why can't we go back on the 1st? Why can't we go back? So I think it's something that we have to manage, but I think it's a minority.
And primarily, obviously, you're a medical school. Were there particular issues there in terms of access to hospitals?
I think that all medical schools across the country will realise that the difficulty with access. I think MOH has done their best, and they've helped us, and I think the local hospitals have always helped us. I think I think across the board, MMC and MQA have helped very much by allowing changes to the curriculum. We've had particular differences because we're accredited by the General Medical Council in the UK, and we have to have a certain amount of, we had to have a certain amount of clinical access. But I think all of the hospitals have done their very best. They've tried to get students in as much as we can. And then I think at the minute we're just doing some catch-up teaching. And once again, this is staff who've been very flexible, and then over various holidays they've taught to allow us to catch up all of our clinical teaching. But I think MOH and the hospitals have been fantastic in helping us.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. And now over to Prof. Giles Yeo. I understand you've got some slides you're going to show. If we can make sure the slides are up on the screen, please. Technical team over there, fantastic. Okay. And same question to you. What did we get right? What did we get wrong over the last 24 months? Right.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I'd share some slides from my point of view. Yeah. The way the pandemic has affected us, we have to look at how we redefine higher education. In other words, lessons from the crisis. We understand the definition of tertiary education is the academic degree that we get it formally after post-secondary schools, and that's a very conventional definition of higher education. But with this crisis that fastens to the track, with economic inequality being one of the most significant barriers to higher education, and that's around the world, the total cost versus the actual value of college degree has been questioned. Not only do students ask these questions, but the media has placed colleges and universities under scrutiny, asking if higher education is worth the skyrocketing cost of tuition fee, accommodation, and board. And that's been something that we are all aware about it, and it's published by the Baltimore Sun. Now, from my point of view, that the lessons that we learned is uncertainty doesn't mean to be a bad thing. We jump into these 2 years about so much uncertainty, all of us in the academics as well as those of us who are in the business of education. We shouldn't be thinking about returning to the good old days prior to the COVID. I think that's something that we need to learn. We cannot be saying that, you know, the endemic means we are going back to the old ways, and that's the wrong thinking as far as I'm concerned. I think maybe we are so much better now, all right? And I heard from the various, all right, we learned through it, we should be so much better. In the past, higher education access has always been a condition of geographic proximity. With increased operation costs and decrease in government funding, institutions have to now innovate in revenue generation and utilize other means to earn money. I think this is particularly so also in Malaysia recently. The dominance of time-bound degrees and just-in-case education will diminish. Why a 3-year degree, why a 4-year degree, all this, and why a 5-year medical degree, and so on. We need to think about that. However, online teaching is not about technology. It is just about also how we use technology to create the digital learning experiences we heard among us is important. And the authentic assessment, are we testing the students authentically? Simply put together, higher education no longer can be composed of only educators, but a new system that in need, educators start to wear multiple hats. We are actually behaving as landlords for those of us who own the building. Restaurants, we have to serve, all right? Counselors, we are also IT gurus, whether the Vice-Chancellor, whether the CEOs, or every one of us are IT gurus, and even bankers. So it is not the business of the CEO to think about the sustainability. To me, I think it's also the business of the deans. So therefore, simply put together, we have to move forward into designing new educational programs that are closely aligned with the labor market and provide certifications, micro-credentials, just not degrees. And I think many of us are moving in this, especially over the last 2 years. We heard people talking about micro-credentials, and MQA had a hard time thinking about how do we actually evaluate micro-credentials. This is just to show that the number of hats that we're wearing, and many of us are. What should have been avoided? I think being too aligned to current trends. there's an obsolete of time and process of residential 4-year degrees. I think these are becoming obsolete. The understanding of intersection of racism and inequality around the world. All right, so the bundle universities program and services that students may not be able to afford or even to buy. We have to start thinking about this in the year 2022. These 2 years have taught us enough. Racism, the different races that we are teaching, and the inequality that, what about those people in Africa? What are those people that are in the rural areas of Malaysia, for example? So have we thought about that? Instead, I think that the learning objective is that educators need to constantly re-examine the use of technologies. We were presented with dozens of new technologies over a very short time period, and all of us are having this too much in our iPad and so on, requiring us to be creative and open-minded in learning the new tools. So we manage so many tools together. So, but do we really need this technology? So we have to think about that. For me, I have always been talking about creating authentic and equitable grading and assessment, and I think whether private or public universities have to look at these change and think about it, that we have to provide students with assessment options. Wherever possible, let them choose which form of assessment that they can manage, or whether it's in a business degree or in a medical degree for that matter. Give students detailed, actionable feedback. The pandemic has taught us that we are able to give feedback immediately online or whatever it is, yeah? So remove time constraint for online examinations because we are going into it, and implement structures that allow for reduced revision and flexible deadlines if we are going into online examinations. Balance formative assessment with summative assessment. At the end of the day, it's not just about 70% examination as per the curriculum structure, but how do we balance that? Can it be the other way? So what's next for people who are in the education business? And many of, as I said, the Vice-Chancellors and even the CEOs who are here, you are in the education business. Your universities can't survive the next quarter if you are not in the business. So I believe that we have to rebuild an educational system that embraces cost-saving measures such as distant learning and hybrid models of operation. So I think the prof say that, well, now students feel better now. They don't have to come back to classes, right? And that's a cost-saving for those who have real estate, big campuses, and so on. Employers will continue to invest in education as a benefit program where they provide financial support to employees seeking non-degree education, non-traditional degrees, and fully online programs. So therefore, building an institutional resilience with flexible modalities is crucial for the near future. So lifelong learning within the industry itself, within the workplace, has to go into things that are just not stuck in the mud of a full-time degree program, 4 years you have to complete it, and so on. Institutions need to be more focused on student orientation in terms of technical knowledge, self-discipline, and actually now we have to look at the mental health and time management where students are learning remotely. I think this is the lesson that we have learned over the 1 or 2 years, although they are studying remotely and they have to go on different times and try to reply back online and so on. But have we thought about their mental health? I think that's something that's cause for concern. So that's my last slide. So that's about the couple of slides that I share, and that's the way I see it as in a bigger picture. All right, and I think the rest of the Vice-Chancellors have seen it in a very detailed manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Yo. Just a quick question in terms of, I'm from an ed tech company myself. Do you think there's a danger that we're sort of overselling the benefits of education technology? And also, I think we've seen over the last 24 months, ed tech companies kind of circling universities, emailing them, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a danger that we're overselling the benefits?
Yeah, I think that we are going into a danger, all right? Because as I said, that online learning is about online experiences. If we cannot bring the online experiences, although it cannot physically replace what we need to see the face-to-face, then we are in a situation that the students experience in terms of that real tertiary education is being misplaced and could be lost eventually, because if we keep focusing on being most high-tech, spending 1 million or spending 2 million on various SIM, on various response media and so on. So I think that's a concern that we have to look at, because at the end of the day, I believe students want to. I got PhD students from the universities who has been from China, who has been going online for almost 6 months.
Sure.
And they are missing that element of supervisory from the universities in Malaysia. They got the visa to come up, but the country don't want them to come out yet at the moment. And that is costly with an alarm. All right, so I think whatever technology that we try to improve within the university, it just can't replace that. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now over to Prof. Mushtaq. We're going to test out the hybrid here. Mushtaq, are you still there?
Absolutely, I'm here, and I've enjoyed everything that has been said. So
fantastic. So same question to you. Yeah. What did we get right? What did we get wrong over the last 24 months? Over to you, Mushtaq.
Thank you very much. I'll try not to repeat what my colleagues have said, but I'd like to start by saying I think the fact that we are here today, it means at least we've survived 24 months. We still have our universities, our students, and our colleagues still have their jobs and doing the work that clearly the world and the community needs. So that's in itself is very important to notice. Actually, we take that for granted sometimes. And I believe that we are where we are because we have good people who have very good intentions, and also because we have access to some resources and some infrastructure. Some of it is within our institutions, but some of it is actually within the country, and we need to pay attention, in my view, to that. The crisis, in my view, also was very beneficial in terms of elucidating what education is and what is not. So it's almost now, personally, I'm convinced that education is not content, because the content is available online. Maybe most of it, or some of it at least, is better than the content that we produce. Yet our students still prefer something that their own lecturer has done and recorded over a video from another person teaching the same topic. I think it's because of that sense of value that we add because of our institution, its reputation, and all of that. But it's also because of the human connection that we create. Because at the end of the day, we recognize and we realize that education requires people to have the interest, actually, to dial in and listen to that content and engage with it. Now, what have we done right or wrong? I'm framing this slightly differently because I don't want to I don't think it's right for us to take credit for what went right, because I think it wasn't necessarily because we were thinking it's a pandemic or a calamity and we are getting ready for it, but we had good people with good intentions. So I'll take it on a couple of levels. The first is the level of the country, the community, and also the government. I'm really grateful that the internet was able to hold up. I was really worried at the beginning that the internet is going to collapse. Not because we are using it, but also Netflix is using it and everyone is using internet. And the fact that we were able to do it, I think this is something we should not take for granted. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful personally for the vaccination program. I think that was very good. We invested in the right place and the right space. I'm also very grateful for the Malaysia community and how they came together and supported each other and helped one another. I think we should also not take that for granted, because we've seen in other places, I won't mention the name, but there are countries where states are fighting over masks and fighting over equipment. I think people here, generally speaking, came together. I want to talk also about things that I'm very happy with and proud of as industry. I think we came together. We became even closer friends. I'm Hurriyat-Wat's member of what we call the UK 5, which is the 5 UK universities. We used to meet, I don't know, 3 times a year. During this pandemic, we met once a month, and sometimes even more than once a month. The VCCPU, which is the Vice-Chancellor for Council for Private Universities, became even a stronger organization, and more people joined us. You know, in the beginning, not every VC was joining, but now almost everyone is with us because people started to see value in coming together. So the industry came together in really a camaraderie and friendship sort of mindset, which is wonderful. I want to talk about 2 more things. One is the university, the level of the university. So at Hurriyat-Wat University, we made a couple of years ago a strategic decision that we are going not only to teach engineering and psychology and actuarial science, but we teach purpose-driven leaders. So every one of our staff and every one of our students has what we call an impact statement, which is a statement of who they are, a statement of what their purpose is, and how they plan to use their knowledge and capabilities to mobilize that purpose into impact. And the thing that was really a very nice surprise, that the workshops where the students came together to develop these impact statement, they do it in groups of 10, supervised by what we call an impact coach, which is one of our staff or the professional services or academy. These small units became the support units for the students. And that is something that we did not even plan for, but it was a very good benefit from our earlier investment in building resilience and building mental health. So that was something that was so good that the university decided to take it worldwide. It started in Malaysia. So last year, every one of our PhD students in September will start their career with us globally with an impact statement session. And I spoken to some of our students who couldn't come to the campus. They are in Africa and South America and so on, and they felt part of the community. The last point I wanted to talk about, which is the thing that I thought we got right, is our own leadership. So I'll speak for myself. The importance of communication became really paramount. And over the first 60 days of the pandemic, every day I produced a 2-minute video and I sent it to all staff and to all students, and talking about them and some positive things. And it's very interesting that towards the, when I said, look, I think we are now all right and I'm going to stop doing this, students and staff wrote to me and say, can you please not stop and keep on producing that? So I think different leaders among us also responded differently because we realized the importance of that role where people are, I know we say uncertainty may be good, but people are really dying to get certainty. They want to know, tell me when you will open the campus. Tell me, should I buy accommodation or not? Now, what are the things, I won't say we did wrong, but I see things that we need to do them right in order for us to really benefit from this crisis. So the first one is about how can we together make Malaysia a truly attractive place for international students. And that's the role of the public, the private, the big, the small, the science, the art, every institution. And I really don't see us doing anything good or great in that space. Students, even if they can't come to the country, we don't allow them to come, they still have to apply for a visa, they still have to pay for that. And I think we ought to get our act together as a country and do something great with this. The other part is flexibility of how we count things like staff-student ratio. I have my students here being taught by the best decarbonization professors in the UK because we have that professor in our Edinburgh campus. But even if that professor is teaching our students, I can't count her among our staff because she is not on our payroll. And I think we ought to open up, why not we even among us in non-competitive areas, 2 or 3 universities jointly appoint a world-leading professor, for example. So I think we need to really open up our mind when it comes to these pre-pandemic metrics. And generally speaking, there is a lot of innovation going on in terms of how do we accommodate and account for, let's say, micro-credentialing and experience and so on. And I think we ought to enable the MQA, or the MQA ought to enable us to innovate. And I know it's very difficult. And I know some people will try to game the system and will try to, to try to maybe skim on cost and do things like that. But we can deal with it rather than we stop the innovation. So I'll stop here, Guy, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks so much. You touched on the international students. Do you think international students are going to come back? Or do you think we've mucked them around too much over the last 2 years that they're not going to start coming back in large numbers?
Well, I really think it depends on us as a country and what we are going to do. You see, there's something about Malaysia, and people who are not Malaysian maybe know it better. People love this country. People would like to come here. I was actually yesterday with our Scottish students who were the first 30 UK students to come to the country. And they loved it. They are loving the roti john, and they're loving the food that we have and so on. So I think it's really up to us to do something good with that and make it simple for them, make it easy for them to come. And maybe even, you see, we talk about the human capital gap that we are having. Why not allow the best international students to come study, graduate, and stay, get a work here? I understand that we always want to keep the jobs for our Malaysian students, but sometimes actually we need to think differently and use and leverage the country's attractive points even more.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly the data we collect, again, Malaysian local students are so friendly to international students, and there's such a great integration that goes on, or perhaps did go on in the past. Prof. Hamdi, I mean, from your point of view, in terms of international students, are they coming back?
Yeah, they certainly do. And when the border is being relaxed by the government and their governments, I think they are coming back, because we have seen the number of applications, international students' application to our university particularly, has risen after in the past 2 years. We can't take a lot of them, obviously, especially for the bachelor degree. But for the master's and PhD, for example, we take probably around 15% max. So a lot of them are basically have to go somewhere. So there are droves of people wanting to come. They are just wanting to know when the border is opening up for them and when their borders are opening up. So yes, they are coming back, at least in our context. Yes.
Right. Prof. Zita, for you, obviously, private institutions are quite reliant on the flow of international students. Are you getting international students coming into?
Yeah, there are a lot of inquiries.
Yeah.
I mean, from China, from India, those are the medical courses and so on. I think we are also, I agree with what you say, trying to make it easier for them to come in. Look at the visa requirement, the health issue requirement. I'm also aware that there are some countries who are not ready to let their students go full time because of COVID. And we hope they will change their mind and open up. And of course, there are changed policies in India, for example, for medical students and so on. But there are students who want to come. But we also, I hope the G2G discussion will be very helpful to look at how the border can be opened and ease the students to come back and join us. Thank you.
Chris, how about you from your point of view?
Yes, we have lots of international students and a huge application. So it's still. I mean, I come obviously from the UK, and I will say that Malaysia is a wonderful country to come to, a wonderful country, really welcoming. So actually, 50% of our intake last year were international students, our first year students, and we've got lots of applications this year. So I think they're still out there. I still think they want to come. I do think we have to be careful. And we have to look at some of the visa issues and other issues. And sometimes I think comments that are made by senior politicians about, I won't say about learning Bahasa and various those things can cause problems. And so I think that it needs to be joined up, and everyone needs to make sure that we are as welcoming as we can be.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm now going to open we've got about 15 minutes left, I believe. Yep, about 15 minutes. So I'm going to open it to the floor. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Please, it's an opportunity to ask a question, not to give a speech, so please make sure you ask a question. We've got a very distinguished panel, so I want them to respond to it. Nina, you've got a hand up, and then the gentleman at the back as well. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, Nina Adlan-Disney from LeapEd Services. Just to pick up on Chris's point, I think, about making it easier for international students. Prof. Mushtaq has also talked about what a wonderful educational destination Malaysia is. But just to pick up on that point about why do we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot by making pronouncements, for example, about the making the language BM compulsory. Now, nobody is saying that students shouldn't learn BM if they want to, but it's just the PR, the comms, the messaging makes us look very heavy-handed, makes us look chauvinistic, makes us look, unfriendly. And maybe Prof. Zita, you were from your LAN and MQA days. Maybe now that you're sitting on the other side of the table, maybe you have some comments on this?
Yeah.
Thanks, Nina.
I don't know, just a quick reply to that Bahasa Malaysia issue. Foreign students are taking Bahasa Malaysia 1 or 2. It's a functional Bahasa Malaysia and they all have to do it, at least up to bachelor level. So maybe the policymakers are not aware of it, or it's a political sentiment. I better zip my mouth. But they are already required to do it. So I'm not sure what else do we want them to do, because we felt that being in Malaysia, they better learn a little bit of Bahasa Malaysia so that they can survive here well.
Right. Anybody else want to comment on the panel? Or
Chairman, here.
Prof. Giles, yeah.
Well, I think Malaysia should go back to the days that we really want to welcome international students. And the policymakers in the country should not add salt to what is happening here. So I think we have been doing quite well in the last 10 years when we started to brand Malaysia education abroad. And many private universities, for that matter, has received international students. We were at one time targeting 200,000 international students into this country. But what is happening now is very sad. Yeah, and policymakers are jumping into the wagon and making statements without consulting the higher institutions, for example. I think that's unfriendly. Yeah, so that's my comment. We have to be friendly and we have to welcome them, relax whatever that is necessary, and not mix up between non-coming students, workers, and unskilled labor. But these are students. Welcome them as students who want to come to our country for knowledge, and perhaps they will serve the country after they have graduated. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. The gentleman at the back, yeah. If you just introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Yes, hi, my name is Mohammed Nasif. I myself, as an international student who has recently graduated from University of Malaysia, I would like to confirm that we actually like living in Malaysia, and it's, to be honest, it's a very good destination. It's a friendly environment. But as I said, Malaysia is doing astonishing efforts in making Malaysia an international hub for international, a regional hub for international students. But still, there is a lot of immigration barriers when it comes to actually staying and working after finishing your degree. Even some universities are requiring students they have to immediately leave once they finish to get the transcripts released. My question is to what extent do you think these policies or these barriers would affect the higher education sector in Malaysia and the internationalization efforts done by the higher education institutions in Malaysia? And do you think that these barriers are affecting the quality of the talent pool in the country, or the benefits of these protective measures to the local students outweigh any negative effects?
Okay, great question. Can I just ask, sorry, which country are you from?
I'm from Egypt.
Excellent, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a great question, and obviously globally we see that those countries who've encouraged students to work, international students to have the opportunity to work after study, have seen increases in numbers of international students. Prof. Hamdi.
Well, okay. It's difficult to say this because you're not in control, but trying to understand the backdrop of what the policies are, we can see that the graduates, even in Malaysia, the local graduates are not getting jobs. 250,000 of them lying around searching for jobs, and the job market has been shrinking due to the economic condition and whatnot. So I think the government is really working hard to protect that, and opening up the floodgate where others can come and work, I think might not solve the issue and might possibly be having retribution from the ground. So I believe that if the economy starts to rebound again, that policy will be revisited. And we have been talking on this line of discussion with the ministry, to see what are the angles and how we can encourage more people to come by actually relaxing the working permits and working condition in Malaysia. But I think that's at the moment, the condition might not be very favorable to that idea as of now. So probably we need to wait until the economy improves.
Great, thank you very much. Chris.
I think all of the universities across the sector, both public and private, understand this issue. I think the universities are trying to work together, and I think we're always working better together through things like MAPCU, VCCPU, through the UK5, to actually talk to the government and various levels of government about this, to try to help with change. I think individual universities on their own won't do that, but we need to work together. I do think that there is a political issue at the moment, as was just mentioned, and I think that whatever we do has to be framed in the right way so people understand why we want to bring people in. And so I think it isn't an easy solve, but I think that we're all trying to work together to actually address these issues as we go forward, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Sure. Mushtaq, I know this is an area of interest for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the first thing that we need to look at is the competitive place or space of Malaysia regionally and globally. So if, as an international student, these students have choices. I think we need to really understand that. And there are other countries within the region, within our reach, that are attempting to take the students who want to come to Malaysia. So I think that's the first thing, is we need to understand the competitive landscape and see where are we placing Malaysia in all of that. This is the first point. Second point, there are actually smaller things that we could start with. I give you an example. We have a Scottish students who come from Edinburgh to do a year with us, and that person wants to do an internship on a program that doesn't have an internship built into it, a business degree or something like that. The company would love to have a native speaker to go and check their website and do that work. We cannot give the students, it's illegal for that students to do an internship in Malaysia. So what does the student do? He traveled to Hong Kong to do an internship. So I asked myself, is this good or not? Now, I understand that if we open the floodgates for cheap labor, then that would be not good. This is not what we are after. But I think policy to say, if you, for example, an area like data science, where the country is looking for, 200,000 data scientists, and we don't have data scientists. So if a university here is graduating data science, then we could just tell the company, look, we want you to employ a Malaysian. If you cannot find, then you employ a foreigner, and we will have to tax you, 5,000 ringgit or whatever. So we make it more expensive. Now, if the people really don't have that skill, they will then get an international, maybe a fresh graduate from here. So I think there are ways to nuance this, to really collect and get the best of the people. The last point that I want to say, which is really something that I hope that we as a sector and a country are able to do. The number of people who have completed their degrees and even postgraduates and from universities like UM and UKM and so on, they are all over the world. And they are now, some of them, ministers, policymakers, and all of that. And Malaysia has actually the potential of having a great soft power, which, again, I don't see anything that is being done in that space. So I really think that the international students and the private higher education, which is, before pandemic, was a 30 billion ringgit kind of industry. I think is a very important thing. And I understand all the security issues that the government is worried about. But I think we need to balance this, and we have a very bold strategy in that space.
Very much, Mushtaq. Any more questions from the audience? Yes, gentleman here. Again, if you can introduce yourself and...
Yeah. That's. Hi, my name is Yongzhen. I'm an undergraduate now. I wanted to ask a question regarding the issue of Bahasa Malaysia again. What I'm curious as to how come when it comes to the issue of Bahasa Malaysia, it always has an antagonistic undertone within the educational circle. Because what I'm curious is that isn't learning the national language part of learning, part of knowledge? It's the same thing as pursuing in other disciplines, as if that to learn Bahasa Malaysia is not within that sphere of learning for the higher educational pursuit. That's my question to the panel. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, it's always a hot issue, isn't it? A hot potato. Does anybody want to briefly comment on that? Yeah, please, Zita.
I'm very happy to hear your statement, to be honest with you, that you know, I think anyone who comes to our country should learn the Bahasa, yeah, because it's functional, it helps you understand the internationalization, perhaps some culture and so on. So I think it's important for students, and it becomes like a national policy in the end. I think it was in the Akta IPTS that says you have to do Bahasa Malaysia for foreign students. But you must look at the value of it. Don't look at it from a negative side of it. And I think maybe some statement that says, you know, you have to institutions have to spend money on recruiting people to teach Bahasa Malaysia. But if you look in a positive manner, and I hope every foreign student look at it in that way, because I think it is of high value, and I really appreciate what you're saying, and I hope that goes around everywhere.
Great, thank you very much. That's great. Thanks, Prof. Zita. Okay, we're running out of time. We've only got 3 more minutes left, but I'm going to ask each of the panel for a closing remark, perhaps something optimistic about the future, and also one most important lesson learned. We'll go in reverse order. Mushtaq, if you could start. The most important lesson you learned.
I think the most important lesson is the importance of the campus. Prior to this, you know, people were saying maybe the university is going to be entirely online, even before the pandemic. And now we know that the experience is social first. The campus is very important. There are people who don't want that, and that's absolutely fine, but majority of our students actually still require that. I am very optimistic for the future of the industry, for the future of education, and for the future of Malaysia as an educational hub.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Prof. Giles.
Yeah, I think, as I shared in my slide, one of the most important things that we have to look at, it is timely. And this has accelerated us to look at various assessment methods. And the traditional assessment methods that has been engraved in our brain should change. So we have to go on assessment methods that are less summative and more formative, so that students' learning time can be assessed much more comprehensively and in the real sense with technology and with the face-to-face and so on. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So the importance of the campus, we need to enhance the assessment methods, improve the assessment methods. Chris?
Actually, I think the thing that I'm actually most proud of everyone at NewMed is how staff and students have all pulled together. They've all worked together. They've all developed, I think, much more of a community. Actually, it might sound strange that everyone's online, but with the pandemic and everything that's happened, that they've pulled together, they've worked together. And actually, it seems to have come out of this. We never had a term for ourselves, but the term Newmedian seems to have come in, and we're actually using that. So that's what I think has been really good, this pulling together of everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Sorry, I've lost Zita, yes, thank you. Sorry, I lost the order there. Sorry, Zita.
I definitely would like to follow up with Prof. Mushtaq's statement about let's go back and look at what international education is going to be like for Malaysia. I think if we work together collectively, and I think we can come back to what we had like 10 years ago, I think we can do a lot. Yeah, this pandemic has given us time to reflect what we have done and not done. And there are policy issues that we need to tackle. I think one of the most important things that I felt was very important was similar to what Prof said, the human connectivity, the human connection. I think it's extremely, extremely important, and leadership skills.
Great, thanks, Zita. Thank you very much. Finally, Prof. Hamdi.
Very shortly, the pandemic has taught us that in normal circumstances, leadership might not be seen as very, very important, even though it's important. But the pandemic has shown to us that it is very, very crucial to have very strong leadership in the institution, because there are lots of things that has to be innovatively done. There are lots of transformation should take place, lots of quick response, for example. So it shows to us how important leadership is in the university, particularly, so that these changes and reform can actually take place with that leadership will and the power that it has at the very top. So I think that's the main point that I can see very clearly in the Institute of Higher Learning.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Prof. Hamdi. And I hope you agree that was a fascinating panel. Lots of different angles, lots of different perspectives. And if you could congratulate our panel in the usual way. Thank you very much.